Hi, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to show you how to attach a band and make a watch. These are watch faces. There's watch faces that come a couple different ways and a couple different ways to attach them. Most of our faces here have a D-ring, and it's called a D-ring because it is shaped like a D. You can turn it that way. And the D-ring does have a little slit in it. The only time I would keep the D-ring on is if you're going to make an interchangeable band. To make the interchangeable band, what you would do is attach 2 lobsters to the D-rings, and then you would bead on your bracelet and attach with crimp tubes. So if you're not sure how to do that, just watch the basic beading video. And what you would do is just attach it like normal, and instead of attaching a loop on one side and the lobster on the other, you're gonna have 2 lobster ends. That's also a great way to attach a medical ID band. Switch out the watch face for one of those. If I'm not doing an interchangeable, what I usually am gonna do is I'm gonna take the D-rings off. The reason I'm taking the D-rings off is because I'm gonna be working with my beading cable. And I'm working with 0.018, and it's bead line 49 strand. I'm going to take the D-ring off because it has a little slit in the back and a little opening. I'm just going to take it with my flat nose pliers, bent flat nose here, just pull up and slide the D-ring off. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You can keep the D-rings if you want. I usually don't go back and use them for anything. The only thing they're kind of good for is to do the watch face. You can sometimes use them in earrings if you want a little bit different look. So now I have my watch face. Before I get started, I also want to make sure that my watch is working. Usually it has a little stopper here. Pull that stopper off, push that button in, wait a second, and then it'll start ticking around. I'm going to keep mine on here just so it's not ticking during our video. So I have my beading wire, and what I've done is I've cut my beading wire to double the length of my wrist plus an additional 4 inches. I'm going to take that beading wire and go right through that piece of the watch on the side. What I can do now is I can keep the watch band as 2 separate pieces, and I can run 2 pieces back, or I can bring those together. What I'm going to do here is pour out a couple little seed beads, and this will help to block so you don't see that beading wire. I'm just going to put 3 seed beads on each side. These are 11-0 seed beads, and they're just going to keep the look to it so that way you don't see a lot of that wire hanging on the side. Once I have this here, I'm going to go ahead and use some of my Purple Crazy Lace Agate and some of my fluorite, and I'm actually going to bring the wires together. So this, when you bring the wires together and bead, it's actually going to make it a little bit stronger because I have 2 wires that I'm working with. So I'm going to put a bead on, and the bead's going to go over both wires. Push it right up to where it needs to go, and I'm going to continue my design. Once I'm done my beading, then I'm going to show you how to crimp. One thing when you do this is you will have some beads that won't fit over the wire twice. Some pearls you'll have trouble with, also some higher end gemstones. If that's the case, you can bring the wire back and do a little crimp right after your first bead, and that will stop you from having to put the wire through twice. You can put an extra crimp bead on there, cut off one of the extra strands of wire, and then just have one to work with. At all cost, I like to try to keep my watch together with 2 strands going through all of my beads, because watches get a lot of wear and tear. So now that I'm done beading my one side, and you have to be careful with the watches because everybody always wants to make them bigger than they really need to be. That face does take up a lot of room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put over both wires one of my crimp tubes. That crimp tube is going to drop next to my beads, and I'm going to put on one side of my toggle clasp. The toggle clasp is going to go on and right next to the crimp tubes. I'm going to bend my wire back upon itself, and go back through the crimp tubes, and if I can, back through the next couple beads. Sometimes this is asking a lot since the wire is now 4 thick between the beads. If you can't get it right after the beads, or back through the beads, don't worry about it. You can cut the wire off right after the crimp tube. Push the crimp tube up next to your beads and pull that extra wire tight. And you want to get rid of as much extra wire as you can, but you don't want to make it too tight that your clasp doesn't move around. So this is pretty perfect for me. I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, squash down on that end, and then trim off my extra wire with my wire cutters. When I flip over to do the other side of the watch, I proceed in the same fashion, adding my seed beads and then taking it all the way back way through and then squash down on my crimp tube. So that's how you can do a watch. You can do medical ID. You can do something like a link in the middle if you want a different look to it. Really simple, and have fun.